Hello and welcome back to Continental Club, where we discuss the hottest topics in European football. Joining me today, I've got Michael McCubs and Henry Hill for your viewing pleasure. McCubs, how are you? Not a good night for Man United, but a great night for Barcelona, who you've got a little bit of an allegiance for.
Yeah, I'm very annoyed I didn't watch the Barcelona game. Because the Man United game was obviously very boring and also genuinely unwatchable in that you couldn't really see what was going on half the pitch for a little bit of the time. Very strange weather in South London, but the Barcelona match. Watched the highlights afterwards, and what a comeback from them. I mean, they should have really done it in 90 minutes. To be honest, they had so many chances. Just really entertaining game from the sounds of it. There's been Dembele on top form.
What a goal!
Yeah, fantastic goal. Frankie De Jong. Carrying on his great form as well. Who else? Obviously a massive win for them, isn't it?
Griezmann with a nice assist for that PK goal as well.
Yeah, Griezmann was fantastic actually for that assist. Good to see a little bit of optimism within the Barca ranks now, and it'll be interesting to see. I feel like Ronald Koeman is kind of planning his kind of stake out at the club almost. Did you hear what he said this week, that if they got rid of him, the club would kind of be a disaster or whatever.
Oh, I missed that.
And now if he wins some silverware, I think he's kind of staking his claim to stay at the club forevermore.
Absolutely. I think that Arteta news got confirmed as fake news, and then Arteta denied it as well. So Koeman, if they win a trophy in a transitional year, pretty good stuff. Henry, how are you on this Thursday morning? You all right?
Yeah, I'm fine. I got duped in by the possibility that the last 10 minutes of that United game would be good. So I switched on and regret it. It's funny when you wake up and you watch 2 hours of Test cricket, and that's more interesting than 10 minutes of a Man United game this morning. But I'm in a good mood. I actually, amongst all my crap, I found my cup from the Russia World Cup, which is what you get in the stadium when you went in there. So I thought, what better way to power my way through Continental Club than with this cup, which is actually probably one of my prized possessions, actually, in a funny way.
I love it. I love a bit of merch. Good stuff. Right, let's kick off with the main topic of today's show. And we are talking shock transfers, because Ryan Hall's series of numbers asked which big stars need a move. And obviously we've talked about Mbappe, we've talked about Haaland quite a lot. We're not going to go over those guys. We're going to talk about shock moves, because there's now just 118 days between now and when the window opens. And that means clubs will be preparing their summer business. McCubs, we're going to kick off with a situation in Italy with Inter Milan, because their sort of financial difficulties might lead to quite a few player sales this summer. But let's kick off with Inter Milan, because it's quite a sort of geopolitical situation. It's obviously tied up with their title hopes as well. It's a complicated one.
Yeah, very much so. There's a lot to get stuck into, and we'll only really be able to scratch the surface right now. But like you say, Inter Milan are flying high in Serie A. It looks like the title is now theirs to lose. They're 3 points clear as it stands. They have a chance to extend that to 6 points when they play Parma tonight. So you will know the result of that by now. So they may be 6 points clear by the time you're watching this. They're unbeaten in their last 8 games leading up to that match, winning 6 of them. That included victories over obviously Milan and Lazio. Lautaro and Romelu Lukaku are arguably in the form of their Inter career. I was hearing the other day that I think they're the most formidable front two Inter have had in terms of the form they're in at the moment since the 1950s or 60s. So they're really flying. But off the pitch things aren't going so well, and it suggests that it's kind of now or never for their title chances. So obviously the Suning Group, the Chinese conglomerate who bought them in 2016 for £230 million. They've hit the rocks. So their share price has halved in 3 years. They've halted operations at all their Chinese football clubs, notably Jiangsu FC, who were before known as Jiangsu Suning. They were the majority shareholder. And that kind of 5-6 year project kind of came to a head last year as well, because they finally won the Chinese Super League after all that investment. Famously, they signed Alex Teixeira back in, was it 2016, when he was on the verge of a move to Liverpool. Before that, they were managed by Fabio Capello. They came close to signing Gareth Bale as well. So a lot of money went into that project. And just due to kind of events in the last year, obviously COVID has had a pretty destabilising effect on Chinese football in general. And that's a subject for another video entirely. But yeah, Jiangsu in particular have been hit hard. They have there's a stake in the company from the Chinese government backed investors. So the Chinese government have a big say in what they do, and essentially, they were instructed to basically, save the kind of retail side of their business and give up on the football side of things. And as for Inter, they're not in the greatest financial state either. They recorded a 102 million euro loss in their latest financial results, and that's one of the biggest in European football. Obviously, everyone's been affected by COVID a lot, but Inter particularly obviously miss out on a lot of footfall at the San Siro, don't they? And they also spent quite a lot, more than many other clubs in Europe, on fees and wages over the last 2 years as well. So Suning are apparently chasing an external investment around £146 million to help out with Inter, and obviously there is also a chance that they may sell up entirely, but right now that doesn't look like, at least that's not what they're saying at the moment. The club also announced that they're ending their 26-year association with Pirelli, obviously the iconic sponsor, which is really sad actually. I kind of just expected that to be something that would just carry on forever. So yeah, Inter shirts will never look the same again. But that deal was worth around £10 million a season. Apparently Suning want closer to triple that. And I think that's something that's obviously been going on for a little while. They've, had quite a big, impact on the club in general, aside from transfers and big money injections, haven't they? They've really tried to kind of build the Inter brand. They're about to unveil a new logo as well. As for those kind of big transfers that they've made in the last few years, the kind of most striking story that came out this week was the Corriere dello Sport saying that they've missed a £4.3 million bonus payment, which was included in the Lukaku deal in 2019. Apparently that means that they'll have to pay the remaining £43 million of the deal in the next couple of months, which is pretty astounding. And the Daily Mail claim that Man United have asked for Lautaro Martinez and Skriniar as compensation. I'll believe that when I see it. But nevertheless, this is the kind of like media furore that these kind of situations throw up, isn't it? And it's difficult to see what Milan do though, what Inter do, because obviously they've spent a huge amount over the last few years. I think they've had a net spend of around 352 million euros in the last 5, which is more than anyone in Serie A. Their wage bill has increased more than anyone in Serie A. So there's a lot of there are a lot of assets there that they could sell. Whether they'd be able to actually sell them for a decent price is another matter, as they saw with Christian Eriksen. No club was willing to take on his wage bill in January, were they? So he's now, Antonio Conte's kind of persevered and has made him a more integral part of the side as a result. So yeah, I don't know. It's a really difficult one to see. Like obviously Hakimi was their big signing last year. Lukaku the summer before. So they still have Barella, whose value has definitely increased since going to Inter, but again, not sure who pays that. Skriniar, I think, is probably the most likely to leave, considering that it almost happened last summer, didn't it? But yeah, it's a difficult one. Like I think that this is the thing with Inter, is that even if they want to sell these players, I think they're going to have to take quite big hits on them in the summer, because I just don't think there aren't many clubs in Europe who are just going to take these players off their hands.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really, really difficult for them. And crucial point, I think, is that Conte is on a massive wage himself as well. I think he's on 11 million euros per season, which is more than Gasperini, Pirlo, Fonseca and Pioli combined. And I think probably the most sellable asset that they've got, obviously, is Lukaku. He's probably the main man right now. I think he's probably been one of the form players in Europe at the start of this year, alongside probably Messi in 2021. He's just been absolutely ridiculous recently. I think he's got 4 goals and 3 assists in his last 3 league games. But it's going to be difficult to see where he ends up. I think everyone's seemingly in the Premier League. City and Chelsea are going for Haaland. Maybe if they don't end up with Haaland, then Lukaku will be in the frame to go to Man City or Chelsea. But they're certainly going to find it difficult to recoup £65 million in a COVID-affected summer when there are more attractive players out there who are younger as well. So it's going to be really difficult to see what happens with Inter. But as you say, it feels kind of like now or never. With all this turbulence this summer, they might have to sell Hakimi, they might have to sell Barella, might have to sell Lukaku if Skriniar leaves as well. It's quite a lot of change for one window. So it feels like now or never for their title hopes in Italy. But Henry, let's move on to someone in Liverpool, Mo Salah specifically. And this was talked about a couple of months ago, but it seems like Liverpool's maybe perilous situation in the league, we're obviously filming this prior to their game against Chelsea on Thursday, might come a cropper in terms of who they can target and who they can keep, maybe?
Yeah, it is an interesting one. I think a lot of people be going, why on earth are you talking about Mo Salah? But there is a lot more substance to this, perhaps, than you realise. Not in like the terminal way, perhaps Inter Milan potentially approaching. But yeah, it's not everything is quite what it seems, I guess, when it comes to Mo Salah. As we obviously know, Liverpool's situation is pretty dire at the moment. They've only won 3 of their last 12 games. I was having a look yesterday. I think if the table started in 2021, they'd be in about 16th right now. Yeah. So they've had a really tough run. I think they lost 4 games in a row. Scored 4 and conceded 10 in their last 5. So it's been tricky. But let's face it, Liverpool have probably had the worst luck in terms of injuries. I can't remember a season where a side has been decimated quite the way that they have. And I for a long time I thought Klopp was just being unreasonable, but I've actually had a good look at their injury list, and you've got to feel a little bit sorry for them. Anyway, knocked out domestic cup competitions. They are doing well in the Champions League, still 2-0 up against Leipzig going into the second leg there. But they are still only 6th in the table, like we said this before the Chelsea game, and they are in touching distance of West Ham in 4th. Their last 4 games of the season is really favourable running against lowly opposition, so they don't count them off just yet. That 2-0 win against Sheffield United, very important. They're there and thereabouts. However, if they don't get into the Champions League spots, then it is going to be tricky, and players like Salah may start to have their heads turned a little bit by some of the bigger boys out there. We've already heard Bayern Munich saying how much they liked him in the press. I thought it was a bit cheeky, actually, in all honesty, that they came out and spoke about another player like that. It's not normally the done thing, certainly between the big clubs. Liverpool rebuffed that. But there's no surprise, really. He has been Liverpool's best player again. He's contributed 43% of all their league goals this year. That's 17 goals with 3 assists in 25 league games. To give you a bit of context there, Bobby Firmino, 6 goals, 5 assists, and Sadio Mane, 7 goals and 3 assists. So while previously certainly Mane and Salah have been running neck and neck, this season Salah's really taken it on and sort of elevated himself there. And without him, there could be a lot worse off position than they are now. Anyway, if we go to the player himself, there has been little inclinations that he's maybe not quite as happy at Liverpool as we might suggest. He was obviously annoyed. He told IS he was unhappy when he wasn't made captain against Midtjylland in the Champions League group stage. A bit petulant, in my opinion, there. And then he's also commented, he's complimented Barca and Real, saying, I think they're top clubs. Who knows what will happen? But right now, I'm focused on winning the Premier League and the Champions League with Liverpool again. I think I discussed Florian Neuhaus making a similar comment last week, saying it's quite dangerous when this who knows what will happen comment comes out. But I think this situation is a bit more tricky to untangle, certainly with Salah and the money that would be involved. And then another one, an interesting one, his former international teammate, Egyptian legend, one of my favourite players of all time, Mohamed Aboutrika, he came out and said that Salah was unhappy at Liverpool and potentially wanted to leave there. So like we said, there are rumours and kind of destabilising factors going on in the background, which could make it really tricky when it comes to the summer. And when a player digs his heels in and decides that he does want to leave, it can often be very difficult for a team to change their mind. Liverpool have seen this all before, obviously, with the Luis Suarez situation. But could a deal actually be done there? And this is the interesting one. Salah has a contract that runs until 2023. So we reckon it would probably cost about 120 million to even make that happen, which in this current climate just seems very, very unlikely. Bayern Munich, I certainly don't think have that kind of money. The only way, I was thinking about this beforehand, I could facilitate that deal happening in my head is if Kingsley Coman was involved or something like that. He was obviously linked a little bit last summer with a move away perhaps to Chelsea or Manchester United, and maybe he would go there. But their wingers have really struggled this season. Serge Gnabry, he's only got 7 goals and 0 assists, and that includes the fact he scored a hat-trick in the opening day of the season and only scored 4 goals since, and that's in 19 league games. And Coleman and certainly their other winger, who I think is on loan, Douglas Costa, they haven't quite been performing to the high standard as well. Obviously Lewandowski leading the charge there. Also, it should be mentioned that Mohamed Salah is 29 in May. So really, for a player of his style and his kind of physique and etc., you'd only expect maybe 5 more years out of that there. So 120 million is a big asking price for that as well. I was also reading Liverpool currently in a bit of a grump because it looks like Egypt are going to call him up for the Olympics this summer, which means they're going to miss him at the start of the season, which is cool. Yeah, which has really wound them up a little bit, which means they won't have him at the start of the season, which is really the last thing that Liverpool needs right now. The point remains, it's not all what it seems with Salah. I personally don't see this happening just because of the sheer amount of money involved. But considering kind of everything that Liverpool have done for him and the kind of success he's had, I have been really surprised to hear the rumours of discontent surrounding the player. And who knows? The thing that's working Liverpool's favour is Real Madrid certainly can't come in for him. Barcelona certainly can't come in for him. There's only as we're saying, Inter, Juventus probably don't have that kind of money either. So maybe Bayern Munich is the only kind of feasible option in my head. But even then, that would be breaking their transfer record in a way that I just can't quite see happening.
Yeah, it definitely seems like a long shot. I feel like the player that they'd probably be most keen to offload in that front three is definitely Bobby Firmino, who is just, his output's just dropping year on year. And he has moments, he's still a brilliant footballer, but his goals, assists, his general involvement in play, his pressing ability, it's all decreased year on year. And he probably deserves, well, out of the three, he needs to be the one that's moved on over Mane and Salah. So I don't really see Salah happening. But let's stay in England now, because there is another player in Hakim Ziyech who is attracting a lot of interest from Italy in particular, with AC Milan and Juventus interested, because obviously since Thomas Tuchel's arrival at the end of January, it's led to a massive upturn in fortunes for a lot of Chelsea players, like Andreas Christensen's come back into the fold, Tony Rudiger, Marcus Alonso more dramatically, and obviously Azpilicueta has instantly come back in. I saw that Tuchel interview with Rio Ferdinand on YouTube the other day, and he said that the first thing he wanted to do was get Azpilicueta back into that side as his captain, as the fulcrum of that side. And he's done it, but it's also spelt some pretty bad news for other players. So Tammy Abraham has only played 123 out of a possible 630 league minutes and was left on the bench against Atletico. He obviously played 167 minutes against Luton and Barnsley in the FA Cup, so it feels like he's very much third choice behind Giroud at the moment and Werner, despite scoring 12 goals this season in all competitions, which is 2 more than next best Timo Werner. Former Dortmund player Pulisic, who most people predicted when Tuchel came in, having sort of shot to prominence under Tuchel at Dortmund, that he'd be a key player of that side. Well, he's only played 109 minutes in the Premier League, played just 3 minutes against Atleti. He's not been in the squad for 2 out of 7 league games. But arguably the worst case has been Hakim Ziyech. He played 82 minutes against Wolves in Tuchel's first game, but he's been dropped or left on the bench for the next 4 and has only played 92 minutes in their last 2 Premier League games against Southampton and United. Obviously, we don't know who Tuchel went with for his lineup against Liverpool by the time, last night for you guys. But, it doesn't look great for Hakim Ziyech, and I feel like his confidence has really been affected as well. And he took a lot of flack on social media after that game against Man United. But actually, I didn't think he was too bad, really. He completed 3 dribbles, created 5 chances, fired off 3 shots as well. It's just probably not been... that game against Burnley earlier in the season where I think Chelsea won 3-0 and he played in a midfield with... I think it was Kovacic and Mount, and you were just like, yeah, this is going to work out really well for Ziyech. He was trying a lot of things were coming off, and it feels like he's maybe just not being as brave on the ball as he once was, which is understandable when he's playing for his place in the side. And if Tuchel persists with this 3-4-2-1 formation, it seems unlikely that he'll keep all of Havertz, Werner, Mount, Pulisic, Ziyech and Hudson-Odoi. And out of that list, it probably makes sense to get rid of Hakim Ziyech if you're going to get rid of anyone. I mean, he's 27 years old. He's 3 years older than the next oldest in that list, Timo Werner. And his performances this year suggest that there'll be interest from other sides, but it's certainly not going to be a real shame necessarily to lose him right now, albeit I would keep hold of him. But I feel like Chelsea made a rod for their own back with all their summer spending last year and now persisting with this formation that limits the amount of players they can put into their side. But I feel like if AC Milan came in for him, or Juventus, particularly AC Milan. I feel like Juventus don't really need him so much, with Kulusevski performing pretty well on the right wing there. But AC Milan, massive step up on Salamakers. I could see him really combining really well with Calhanoglu as well, behind Ibrahimovic and Leao and Rebic, or whoever plays up front as well. So Hakim Ziyech could be an interesting one. I mean, McCubs, of that Chelsea list, I mean, are you with me? Do you think Ziyech is the one that's going to go, if any of them?
Yeah, I think you make a pretty good argument for it, to be honest. I think Ziyech's probably the most natural creator at Chelsea, which would be our only worry with letting him go. I think he's definitely been their best creative force this season, at least in games that I've watched. However, you've got players like Pulisic and Hudson-Odoi, and Mount, who all have the potential to improve exponentially over the next few years. And Ziyech is not probably going to get any better than he is at the moment, if I'm honest. So, yeah, I think in that sense, he would be the player to sell. And I think AC Milan's a pretty good shout as well. I don't really have a better shout in there. I can't really think of a bigger club who would suit him as well as AC.
Yeah, I think it would be a really good link-up, and I think Zlatan would love the sort of balls that Ziyech can whip in as well. But it's a good point about his creativity. He's probably the most naturally creative player in that list, also a very good set-piece taker as well. I feel like it'd be a mistake from Chelsea, but I don't see how they can persist with all those options. But guys, what do you guys think? Do you think Tuchel's going to get rid of any of his attacking options? Do you think Mo Salah could join Bayern Munich? Unlikely. And which of the Inter Milan players will they be forced to sell because of their financial situation? Let us know in the comments down below, and let's move on to our big match preview. It is a weekend of simply monster clashes all across Europe. Get this, okay, there's Juventus versus Lazio on Saturday, as well as Bayern Munich versus Borussia Dortmund in Der Klassiker, and Monaco versus Lille on the same day. But arguably, when we were preparing for this, we thought no clash will have a bigger impact on a title race in Europe this season, or this weekend at least, than Atletico Madrid versus Real Madrid at 3:15 on Sunday. It's first versus third as it stands. Simply massive clash. Henry, Atletico Madrid crucially got back to winning ways last weekend.
They did, and they really needed to going into this clash, because you do get the sense that while they've been declining, Real Madrid have sort of been slowly creeping up on them, haven't they? They beat 7th place Villarreal 2-0 away from home of goals. It was an own goal from Pedraza, but then a lovely goal from João Felix as well. They really could use him right now. The problem with Atletico recently is their kind of attacking form has slightly fallen off, and it was pretty much the same here. Villarreal had 64% possession, 19 shots with 6 on target. Atleti only had 6 with 5 on target. XG had it at 1.9 to 0.8. So for all those XG merchants out there, it's not looking good for Atletico in that game. And I think we covered in the Euro Roundup against Chelsea in the Champions League, 0 shots on target at home, remember. And they've only created more than 1.2 XG in once in their last 5 league matches. That was a Levante away, which I think ended in a draw there. But the result was the all-important thing, and they're still 5 points ahead of Barcelona and Real Madrid with a game in hand. However, lose that, and that falls down to 2. So like you said, Dougie, lots riding on this game. Let's face it, though, it's still been a pretty excellent domestic campaign. They've won 8 more games, lost 2 fewer, and scored 22 goals and conceded 1 fewer than this stage last year. So they've got 18 more points than they did at this point last year. And interestingly, they're only 2 points behind where they were when they last won the title in 2013-14, when Barca, Real and Atleti were all tied for points on 60. So kind of history perhaps repeating itself. It's all getting quite close. If we look at the rest of their team stats, they're 4th for XG, 1st for goals against, and they're the 5th best side according to expected points. But that's mainly because they've scored more than 10.8 goals more than their XG predicts. Why could that be? Well, it's obviously Luis Suarez. What a revelation he has been. He scored over 4 more than his XG suggested he should have. And Marcos Llorente, who's over 5 as well. Obviously, we've talked about him a lot, how he's blossomed into this wonderful attacking force. But I think that's really where the crux lies, is they've managed to kind of sort out their attacking issues. Certainly last season, Simeone switched to a back 3 with 5 using the wing backs, and that's kind of helped push them on a lot more. And you have seen him play some quite audacious attacking choices recently, with certainly Llorente and Thomas Lemar in the wing back roles. So really trying to go after games as well. And then, of course, we have to mention João Felix, who got on the score sheet on Sunday. That was his first goal in 5 gap matches, and just his second in the last 14 games, dating back to the start of December, when before that he was really one of the stars of La Liga. Like we said, but they'll need him really to come to the form if they're going to see through this run-in. He's still averaging a goal contribution every 112 minutes in La Liga, along with 2.6 shots, 1.2 key passes, and 1.8 dribbles as well. So these are all kind of excellent returns. This is a huge test for their squad. They've been beaten by Bayern, Real Madrid, Juventus, Cornea, and Chelsea this term. So they have suffered more defeats than perhaps people realise, but they have beaten Barcelona 1-0. This is a big game that they need to pass the test if they're serious about pushing on and sealing this La Liga title, which before Christmas I'd say they thoroughly deserved, but you never know what's happening now. And as we said, Ronald Koeman has almost got Barcelona pushing in the right direction. I would absolutely hate to see that happen.
Yeah, I mean, the pressure's starting to go on them as well. And Real Madrid put in such a good display the last time they met. I think they won 2-0 quite comfortably. But it was good to see João Felix back on the score sheet as well. He was so angry in his celebration. I read about it afterwards. Apparently it was because Renan Lodi, who'd come on at left back or left wing back, had been taking the piss out of him, saying that he could never score. So he was kind of shouting at him, saying, up yours, take that, was the general gist. Although I don't speak Spanish or Portuguese, maybe he was talking to him. And anyway, let's move on to Real Madrid, McCubs, because their domestic form, it hasn't been convincing in terms of performances, but their results you can't really argue with.
Yeah, I mean, both them and Barcelona have kind of caught up now, and there genuinely is a title race on, isn't there? I mean, what if Real do win this game, they'll be 3 points behind them or 2 points behind them with Atletico with the game in hand. So yeah, this is huge. But yeah, they've been on a very solid domestic run. They obviously had a very slow start to the season. Lost 3 of their opening 10 games, but they've only lost 1 of their last 15. That was that 2-1 loss away at Levante. They've won 11 of those 15 games as well, and this is all despite an injury kind of crisis, which has seen their bench kind of become just a list of Real Madrid B players essentially. But on Monday, it looked like that unbeaten run could have come to an end, didn't it? They were 1-0 away at Real Sociedad, who have picked up their form a little bit in the league at least. That Porto header looked like it was going to seal the points for them, but Vinicius saved the day in stoppage time, his first goal since the 21st of October, so he'll be hoping to kick on from there. But it was, like you were saying, Dougie, not the most convincing performances from Real of late, and it was similar on the night. They had 60% possession, they completely dominated that second half, but really didn't create much in terms of clear-cut opportunities. They had 20 shots, but only put 3 on target. XG actually had it at 2 to 1.2 in their favour. But again, they have to be more ruthless in the box if they're going to make those kind of metrics count. But nevertheless, despite their injury problems and their less than convincing performances, they're not having actually as bad a season as perhaps we've been led to believe by these performances. They've still got 53 points in La Liga. That's the same as they had at this stage last season when they went on to win the title, albeit, that was a season in which they kind of won the title on being kind of the most competent team rather than being the most electric. Obviously, their defensive record last term was excellent, wasn't it? Even better than Atleti's. And, they were also questioned on quite a few occasions during the campaign. Barcelona was still top and odds on to win until that final kind of month and a half. So we do have to take that with a little bit of a pinch of salt. They've also scored 3 fewer goals. They've conceded 3 more. But yeah, all in all, especially considering Ramos has been out for so long, and the kind of defensive mishaps we've seen on occasion in his absence, Zidane is just about making it work. And obviously, if he could pull off a title as well, I think it would be a real a real show of his strength as a manager, especially at a time when I think a lot of Madrid fans are kind of starting to question what's going on at the club in terms of where their transfer policy has gone in the last few years, why a lot of these star players who have come in haven't kicked on yet under Zidane, especially on the wings, which we'll get onto. But their main issue in this season, at least, has been in the cup competitions, hasn't it? Obviously, they lost to third tier Alcoyano in the Copa del Rey. They were beaten by Athletic Club in the Super Cup semi-finals. Scraped through their Champions League group. It was a difficult group, to be fair, and then only beat Atalanta despite 1-0, despite facing 10 men for 70 minutes. So I think that's where the biggest disappointments have been, haven't they? And they haven't really been firing up top either. Obviously, Benzema's still carrying them in that sense. He's got 12 goals in the league, but aside from that, Casemiro's the only one to have scored as many as 5. Kroos is the only player to have managed as many as 6 assists. So yeah, like last season, there just isn't that much coming from the flanks. Vinicius, Hazard, Asensio and Rodrigo only have 14 goal contributions in 65 combined league games, which really is not good enough. And I know we've spoken a lot about whether Vinicius Jr. has what it takes to really make it at Real. We've had similar conversations about Asensio. Obviously, Hazard has been had a lot of fitness troubles and whatnot. But yeah, it's just really isn't good enough. This is Marco Asensio is a player who was generally considered one of the top 2 or 3 young players in Europe as recently as 2017. And the fact that I don't know, I think Zidane does have to take some of the blame for that, even if Vinicius and Rodrigo are still very raw. To consistently not being able to get output from your wide players, having spent so much money in those areas over 2 years, I think is pretty damning. Only Benzema and Vinicius are operating at above 0.3 expected goals per 90. Only Kroos and Valverde are operating above 0.3 expected assists. So given the circumstances, I don't think they're doing too badly, but it's clear that there is a lot of work to be done still. And the same questions about the attack that have been asked basically since Ronaldo left are still there, aren't they? And that is a worry, I think, for Real fans. But a win here would be huge for them, wouldn't it? They play Elche following this game, and then Atalanta. Obviously, they're hoping to reach their first quarter-final in 3 years in the Champions League. Atalanta go into that game in pretty good form as well. They've won their last 3 games in a row, haven't they? Pretty emphatically as well. So yeah, I mean, a win for Real Madrid in this game would be a huge psychological boost for the players and for Zidane, I think.
It'd be absolutely massive. Monumental, some would say. And I just don't think there's any guarantee that they go through in that Champions League tie, to be totally honest. I mean, I was watching the highlights this morning of Atalanta versus Crotone last on Wednesday night, and they won 4-1 again. They're scoring so many goals at the moment. They've managed to cope with the loss of Papu Gomez. Ilicic has been in and out of the side after sort of falling out with Gasperini at various points as well. And Luis Muriel, Zapata, Pessina, they're just carrying that side forward. And there's no guarantee at all that they won't manage to overturn that gap at the Bernabeu. I say it right now. But on this game, for Atleti, they have the luck of not that many injuries compared to Real Madrid. Obviously, Yannick Carrasco and Jimenez are out, so that means Saul Niguez is likely to continue as a left wing back, and it'll be then Savic, Hermoso and Felipe in the back line, in that back 3. For Real Madrid, Militao, Carvajal and Ramos are all out. Militao might be on the bench. Apparently there's talk that he might come back, as might Eden Hazard, who has just had so much bad luck with injuries. And it really is now or never for his Real Madrid career. But he might be on the bench on Saturday. And apparently Benzema, if all goes well in training this week, could feature as well. You imagine that Zidane, even if it's a 80% fit Benzema, will go for him from the start. Real have won their last 3 matches against their rivals, scoring 7 and conceding just 1. Atleti have only won 2 of their last 10 meetings and haven't beaten them in the league since the 7th of February 2015. So this is absolutely massive for them. You feel like this is their sort of final test. If they get this done, 8 points with a game in hand, it should be sealed. But we'll see. We need a score prediction. Henry Hill, what do you reckon?
I think this probably isn't what you want me to say, but I don't think this is going to be a great game. I just can't see it being a particularly good game. I just, without Benzema as well, Real Madrid. I'm sorry, I know you guys don't like me saying it, but Vinicius is not great. He scored like 13 goals and 31 goals in 174 appearances, and most of those were at Flamengo when he was younger. Like, in his time at Real Madrid, I think he's just been really poor. But and with him, these kind of players...
Yeah.
That's true. Like, Mason Greenwood's got 22 goals and 88 appearances. Ansu Fati's got 13 and 43. That's the same number as Vinicius has ever got for Real Madrid, 13 goals. Anyway, I digress. I think this will be... I think if Luis Suarez turns up, I think this could be a 2-0 victory to Atletico Madrid. Why not?
Oh, love it. McCubs, are you in agreement?
Yeah, I was initially thinking, for the title race, and I quite like to predict that these kind of games will just go in favour of a title race. I was kind of backing Real, but then I kind of thought that Real attack versus what has been, again, a pretty solid Atletico Madrid defence this season. Jan Oblak has been as good as he's ever been, hasn't he, really?
Yeah.
Curious.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a narrow Atleti victory. I can see it. I think it's going to be... I'm going to say 1-0 Atleti.
Okay. I'm going with 1-1. I'm slightly disappointed that I'm going with that, but that's just what I think. Guys, get your score predictions in the comments down below. I think last week we were all right, but I don't think anyone predicted 3-2 Leipzig. Great comeback from Leipzig.
That was great.
Hopefully we see more drama like that this weekend. Let's move on to our quickfire question. Okay, our quickfire question. We're going to do this absolutely rapido because we've been talking for ages. It's been a great show, but we have been talking for ages. The question comes in from Todor Balabanov. Great name, Todor. He says, please do Schalke as your main topic. Why are they so crap this season? We're not going to do Schalke as our main topic, but Henry, it's been a disaster for Schalke.
Yeah, I think we can sort of ignore this anymore. It has been horrendous. On to their 5th manager of the season. Christian Gross recently fired. He came, apparently, I was just reading, he tried to install almost like Sam Allardyce-esque kind of tactics, really rigorous, tight defending, and apparently he had really weird mixture of zonal marking and man-to-man marking. It wasn't quite clear. He couldn't even get the names right of a lot of his players, sort of bumbling around. And then a lot of the new signings that came in, Mustafi, Kolasinac and Huntelaar, 3 big names. Apparently they went up to him and tried to get him to change, and he got really annoyed about that. So loads of dissent. I think they fired the entire backroom staff.
And the sporting director.
Yeah. Apparently he was at maybe Leipzig, was it beforehand? Completely out of his depth over the last 2 years. Has made some really shocking decisions. Led Schalke down a dark path. And I don't think the magnitude of this is mental. They're the 3rd most successful club with Werder Bremen in German history. Been in the Bully since 1991. Big team, one of the biggest supported in Germany. And they're on course. At the moment, they have the worst points tally of any team ever in Bundesliga history at this point. Wow. And I think, was it Tasmania, Berlin, who are only worse than them? And they were kind of like a joke team put in the 50s. Because basically at that point German football needed a Berlin presence in the league, and I can't remember, the other main teams had fallen out. So Tasmania put in, and they're very proud of how badly they did that season almost. And Schalke have almost broken a few of their records. But yeah, it has been truly awful. They've only got 1 win all season. Teams are falling apart. Players are all going to leave this summer. Absolutely swimming in debt as well. Something like 200 million euros. Relegation. Sometimes they say relegation can be a reset button. In this situation, this could be, McCubs, I know you're keen on Kaiserslautern. This could be the next Kaiserslautern if it's not handled correctly in the next sort of critical 12 months. It's
James who's into Kaiserslautern, but I, as a friend of James, I also pledge allegiance. And I was hearing as well that apparently their sponsorship with Gazprom, who are obviously a huge sponsor, apparently there's something in that whereby that might not be able to carry on if they get relegated. There's something about that deal being maybe voided if they get relegated. That's not set in stone, but that's from when I was listening to a podcast the other day, that's what they are suggesting, is that they might have to kind of look at that. Obviously they will be looking at that very closely. It is really worrying for them. And I think the hope is that they are too big to do a Kaiserslautern, because they are, in the top, 3 most supported clubs in Germany. So yeah, it is pretty worrying. I guess the one thing is that it's better that they made this decision now rather than at the end of the season. I think the quicker that you can arrest a slump or get a new team in to try and arrest what's going on, the better. Equally, I'm not really sure how inspired their new head coach is, Dimitros Gramozis, who I hadn't really heard of before. I think Schalke fans and German football fans in the comments would have to let us know more about him, because he's not really had that much experience or any experience in the German top flight. So So yeah, that'll be interesting to see how that goes. But yeah, I hope more than anything that that is the right decision, and that they can kind of bounce back after the next season.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult too. I mean, the Bundesliga 2 is quite a competitive division as well. I think it took Hamburg quite a few years to get out of it. They're now top of the league there. We saw Stuttgart finish second in it last year to Arminia. They're now flying high in the Bundesliga. So there are some quite good sides in there, and it might take a while for Schalke, especially if they've got to rebuild the entire squad. But yeah, get the hashtag Tears for Kieran in the comments section below. Yeah, it's mainly been their defence, to be honest. I think they've conceded 5 more goals than West Brom. I think they're over 60 league goals now. Which is pretty damning, and it goes back to a really poor summer of business. Trying to clear off the debt. They got rid of Weston McKennie on loan. They obviously loaned out Kabak in January. Daniel Caligiuri as well, who was one of their better players. Guido Bergstaller as well, who really disappointed in a Schalke shirt. But yeah, just simply not good enough in a recruitment end. Too little too late in January, and they're going to go down with an absolute whimper. So yeah, hashtag Tears for Kieran. But guys, that's all we've got time for on Continental Club for this week. I hope you guys enjoyed our discussion of the shock transfers that could happen, our chat about the Madrid derby, and of course the sad story of Schalke this year. McCubs, if they've enjoyed this, what should they go and watch now?
They should go and watch our EFD Explained from the weekend on why West Africa produces so much talent, written by our very own Henry Hill here. Excellent video.
Thank you.
Go and check that out. And then if you're still around after that, go and check out the South London documentary by Sam, which was also excellent. And features interviews with Hudson-Odoi, features interviews with Joe Gomez as well. And it's just, an excellent little documentary. So yeah, go and show that some love on Football Daily.
Absolutely. Anything from you, Henry?
The podcast this week was looking at whether or not Phil Foden should be in the England squad. I think that's really interesting. And we've just had a EFD 10 superstars, your club let go. Some interesting names there. I just want to quickly apologise to any Tasmania Berlin fans. I didn't mean to call your club a joke. Not at all. Fantastically named club. And, it was just circumstantial at the time. But yeah, I love Tasmania Berlin. But yeah, go check out all of our content across the channels.
Love it. Thanks very much for watching, guys. We'll see you next time. Peace.